Guys, I did not see this one coming. Jacob Zuma is in the Epstein files. I'm not even joking. So this email is one of the 3 million documents released by the US Department of Justice on Friday, and it seems to suggest that Jacob Zuma, our former president, had dinner with Jeffrey Epstein and a Russian model while Zuma was visiting London in 2010. It says, "Dear Vera," who is apparently the model, "I'm a friend of Jeffrey Epstein and I've been asked to help arrange a small dinner tomorrow night for President Jacob Zuma of South Africa at the Ritz Hotel at 7 p.m. tomorrow evening." Now, obviously, this email doesn't necessarily indicate any specific wrongdoing, and it's possible the meeting didn't even happen, but it's crazy that South African leaders are now being mentioned in the Epstein files. How crazy is that?
Hi lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, you're welcome to Building the Verse. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload a video, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
I recorded this video way too many times, mainly because I'm trying to get to the point quicker. Not that Epstein is linked to Cape Town and that he thought that there was an unlimited resource of models or people that he could pick from in a poor shithole country, as his friend calls it. I actually am worried, not because this information is new, but because people are not necessarily looking at the actual danger. South Africa is fertile ground for rich millionaires, billionaires to come and exploit. And it's rich, fertile ground because the culture of exploitation already exists on the most basic level. Thus, we have the crisis of gender-based violence, where women are seen as capital, seen as commodities to transact between men for their power, phallic object swinging in business, in social settings, in life. That's the most basic level. When you have digital nomads, foreign investors, foreign tourists, an influx of foreign people, you need various layers that protect citizens, and our various layers are already not working for our local people who are trying to get help from authorities once they've been victims of GBV. Now, if someone like Epstein was found in South Africa, what are the chances that he will be prosecuted and brought to the book? It would have died at the first cop that showed up at the scene. Why? Because our social fabric is that of, we'll sort it out at home first, and if that doesn't happen, we buy the cops. And if that doesn't happen, we buy the magistrate. We talk about the downside of the influx of foreigners into South Africa in the lens of property development, pricing us out of the city. But the city is going to become so much more dangerous for the people who live in it. They will become the prey and the toys of the rich. This is really concerning, and it doesn't help that there are already documentaries out in the world. Channel 4 released a documentary last year talking about the culture of slave queendom in South Africa and just how easy it is to buy women in South Africa. Then there were local documentaries who exposed the internal intricacies of the slave queen industry or the sex work industry in South Africa. All of this, shocking but key information for predators.
Breaking news, the former president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, is in Epstein files. So this email is one of the 3 million documents which was released by US Department of Justice on Friday. So in this email, it shows that the former president of South Africa might have had dinner with Jeffrey Epstein and also a Russian model. So this is what is in the email. "Dear Vera, this is the name of the Russian model. I'm a friend of Jeffrey Epstein and I've been asked to help arrange dinner for South African president tomorrow evening." So this guy is telling the Russian model to arrange dinner for Jeffrey Epstein to meet up with South African president and also her to meet up, all of them to meet up together. So we are not sure at all if this meeting really happened. This is just an email. At that time, the former president of South Africa was in London for business meeting, but with this email, it shows that he was not only there for business, he was also there to enjoy himself, to meet up with Jeffrey Epstein and some Russian models. This email is from 2010. As of now, we don't know exactly if this meeting really happened. Did the former South African president meet up with Jeffrey Epstein together with the Russian model? And what were they doing?
So Africa popped up in Epstein's files, and let me tell you this up front. It's ugly. When I said Africa was an open continent, I wasn't being poetic. I mean straight up open season. North, east, south, west, nobody was spared. Epstein and his associates were using Africa to diversify their corrupted resumes. 1 minute they're financiers, philanthropists. The next minute what? They're brokers, politicians. Guys, there's so many dark themes going on, from surveillance, experiments, to NGO recruitment, capturing financial systems. Now let's get into East Africa. Almost every single country was mentioned, from Ethiopia to Rwanda, Kenya, Somalia. And since Somalia is hot in the news right now, let's get into it first. Now, Epstein reportedly tried so many times to capitalize on Somalia's setback through the financial system. And what shocked him was the fact that remittance, sending money back home, made up a huge share in Somalia's GDP. But that's not a surprise, okay? Somalis abroad will always hold their families down by sending them money. And they do that through the private telecom sector or Somali-owned money transfer companies. Now, instead of Epstein thinking, oh my God, this is great, that these Africans are managing their population and supporting one another through a functioning system, he was like, how can I get my nasty fingers in it? So along comes 2013, Barclays and Dahab debacle. See, for years, Barclays, a British multinational bank, was perfectly fine doing business with Dahab until Barclays noticed that this Somali black-owned money transferring company, Dahab, that's operating in over 126 countries, by the way, was dominating Africa's remittance market and making a lot of money. And it irked them. They're probably thinking, an African dominating a financial market? So you know what happened next? Barclays tried to muscle their way into Dahab lane by shutting down their accounts to try to cut them off from their operations. And Epstein panicked and ran to his friends in the Middle East to try to convince them to open a bank so they can slide into that space, because he believes somehow that they are better equipped. And he even admits in one of the emails that, yeah, I know money's gonna go into bad guys' hands, but there's money to be made. Imagine that. An efficient, reliable, and affordable financial system that serves 40 to 70% of the population gets into the hand of morally bankrupt individuals, okay, that doesn't have the people's interests at heart. It would have been a disaster. Anyway, so Dahab did take Barclays to court, and the British High Court Judge Lancelot, I believe his name is, ruled in favor of Dahab. Now this didn't stop Epstein, because he starts entertaining politics, trying to get Somaliland to divide off of Somalia for resource grab. Now let's park it over here just for now. There's so many other dark themes going on, like Gates being the ticket into Africa, or like surveillance countries.
South Africans, do you know that there's a South African on the Epstein files? Did you know that? South Africans, did you know that? This is crazy. So, this is what actually happened. The list that was released had actually initially redacted the South Africans that were involved. But now that list has been released. I'm going to drop a video that's going to explain a little bit more about this. Just stay on here and let me just get this together. I'm going to drop a video now.
So the curious case of Nathi Tetto, I think that's how you say it, Nathi Tetto, who was the South African's ambassador to France. And he was found to have fallen off the balcony of the 22nd floor of a hotel in Paris. And he has been identified in one of the Epstein videos, sat in Epstein's private plane, and he's been identified as Nathi Tetto. And it's really interesting because he literally was in that plane with Epstein, and then he apparently unalived himself by falling off the balcony of a hotel in Paris. And I remember the reports at the time. Nobody seemed to suggest that there was any issues with him, and this case gets even more curious.
If you actually learned about chattel slavery and what was done to black families, black children, buck breaking, sex farms, taking their children, feeding them to alligators as bait, the list honestly goes on and on. If you actually sat there and read about the atrocities in detail, how gory it actually was during chattel slavery, you would be like majority of the black people who have been reading it and not be surprised. Is it disturbing? Yes. Is it bothersome? Yes. Is it surprising for us? No. White people have been doing this for centuries, even before slavery. So, yeah, stop drinking the Kool-Aid, y'all. Brush up on history. The only reason why you all are caring is because you realize and discover that it's happening to y'all. The Epstein files is just the horrors of chattel slavery, but it happened to white children. It's the only reason why you guys are in upheaval. But when it was happening to black kids, when it's happening to our ancestors, so long ago, get over it. Just saying.
People reminded me of the book that was published in 2018, The Lost Boys of Bird Island. And in that book, it was alleged that during apartheid, a group of powerful men SA'd vulnerable colored boys on Bird Island, just off of Algoa Bay. The authors of that book was Mark Minnie, a police detective, and Chris Stein, an investigative journalist.
You had to leave the country, you were naming death squads. So when did you decide enough?
Within 2 years of the book being published, it was withdrawn. In 2020, NB Publishers removed the book out of circulation and issued a public apology. They stated that key allegations in the book couldn't be independently verified and that individuals named in the book were implicated unfairly.
Allegations and what was found and the evidence that exists are so shattering to the idea of the past that it's a very dangerous playground to be playing in, as you've noticed since publishing the book.
I think that the cover-up is continuing 31 years later, because not all the perpetrators are dead, and not all the victims are dead, and not all the people with knowledge of what happened are dead.
Now, shortly after the book's release, Mark Minnie was found unalive, and the police ruled it a suicide. No public inquest had further produced any findings, and since then, no criminal case was ever successfully prosecuted. No court ruled truth to these allegations, and no commission had fully investigated what really happened on Bird Island.
If a book can be discredited now, if Mark can be discredited, if I can be discredited, then future revelations will not be believed.
Nearly 40 years later, there's still no answers. All we know is that the apartheid state exercised extreme secrecy and control. There was abuse of power, which was systemic, particularly against marginalized black and colored kids, and that children who reported anything during apartheid was rarely believed, especially if their abusers were politically connected.
The uproar is not about what's in the book. There is very little in the book. We made that clear. It's about what still has to be uncovered or what still has to be revealed.
Some of the alleged victims' names in the book are still alive today, and they've never received any formal acknowledgement or closure. It's still an unresolved story, marked with silence, a lot of retractions, and the absence of accountability. And that's really the point, isn't it? Powerful men are often shielded by political systems. Institutions often fail to investigate properly, and that victims are often discredited and dismissed, allowing abuse to thrive. The global reckoning of Jeffrey Epstein showed what happens when warning signs are ignored for decades. And Bird Island is a stark reminder that that danger isn't foreign to us. It has existed before, and it has been covered up before. It can exist again, and it will.
Everyone keeps saying that Epstein's story is just America, but the latest files mention South Africa. And when I read this part, I actually paused, because most people think Epstein equals Florida, New York, and that island. End of story. But this is now, I think, part 3 or part 4 of this series, because every time new documents drop, Africa quietly shows up in the background. Not rumors, not TikTok theories, actual emails. Hi, my name is Noreen, and if you follow me, you already know I don't do conspiracy theories. I do receipts, and this is real Africa stories. So here's what's actually been reported. In the newest document releases, there are emails referencing Cape Town, specifically the phrase scouting models. Cape Town, South Africa. And honestly, I had to reread that twice, because we already know how Epstein recruited. He didn't knock on doors saying, "I'm dangerous." He sold dreams, modeling, travel, education, opportunities. That's how girls got isolated. That's how control happened. So when you see model scouting linked to his network, it should make you uncomfortable, because the pattern is familiar. Same playbook, different continent. Then something else appears, a name. Jacob Zuma. Yes, a former South African president. Reports say he attended a private dinner connected to Epstein during a UK visit years ago. Now let's slow this part down and be fair. Dinner does not equal guilt. There's no evidence of criminal involvement. But it shows proximity. And proximity was Epstein's whole strategy. He surrounded himself with powerful people, politicians, royalty, business leaders. Access was his currency. That's how he moved through the world. And here's the part that hit me hardest. A South African survivor has now spoken publicly. Her story, recruitment, travel overseas, isolation, manipulation. Exactly the same pattern we saw in the United States. Different country, same tactics. Because traffickers don't care about borders. They care about vulnerability. So if you're thinking this couldn't touch Africa, I want to let you know it already did. Now, here's what we actually have, and this matters. We don't have proof of an Africa-based network. We don't have charges. We don't have investigations centered here. What we have are threads, emails, mentions, names, survivor voices. And just to be really clear, because the internet mixes everything together, I've also seen the rumors online linking Epstein to other places like Somalia and Aden, I think her name is, and different clinics or charities. Right now, those claims are not backed by documents or verified reporting. No emails, no court records, no proof. So I'm not going to repeat speculation, because this page sticks to evidence, not fear. If it's not in the files, it doesn't make it into my videos. And honestly, that's how we protect the truth. So here's my question for you. Do you think Africa is just a passing reference in these files? Or are we only seeing the beginning of what might be coming out? Because every time new documents drop, another African country shows up. And that tells me this story isn't finished. This is the Africa you're not shown, but I'm here to show you.
Breaking news here, my country people. Cameroon mentioned multiple times in a newly unsealed Epstein document. Newly unsealed U.S. court document linked to Jeffrey Epstein, reportedly referencing Cameroon more than 30 times, raising questions online about Epstein international movement and contacts. One document reportedly mentioned Epstein planning a two-week hunting trip to Cameroon. This reference have sparked speculation and debate, especially as Epstein was accused of sex trafficking, abusing minors, and silencing his victims before the death of before his death in 2029. My country people, what am I reading here? This is why Cameroonians are asking concern. Why is Cameroonian people asking, what was Jeffrey Epstein's plan in Africa, in Cameroon? Why does Cameroon appear so frequently, almost 30 times? Who did Epstein meet during this trip? Why is the African receiving little attention about this situation? My God, my God. Who were these people Jeffrey Epstein was talking to in Cameroon? When all the court documents will finally be released, fire in Yash, wind go blow, and fire in Yash go open. Who were these people in Cameroon that were talking to Jeffrey Epstein? And were they doing human trafficking in Cameroon? Names are going to be dropped. Don't worry. You know when that list will be finally published, those people who are involved. Why Cameroon is mentioned 30 times? Those people who are involved, I will bring them here on this platform and we will dissect what they have been doing. Did they visit the island? Did they participate in trafficking with Jeffrey Epstein? Why is Cameroon mentioned 30 times in this unreleased, in this unsealed document of Jeffrey Epstein? And this is not all. Cameroon. Who are the people? Let me know in the comment section if you know some of the people before this document will be published to the public. Let me know in the comment section. We're going to mention names. We're going to call all their names. We know they fear no man. Freedom of speech and expression. And we'll hold them accountable. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share. Why is Cameroon mentioned 30 times on Jeffrey Epstein file? Let's go.
They dropped the Epstein files, and I know that most people are more focused on covering which celebs got caught up in the mix, but I'm more interested in what this has to do with Africa. Because inside, there are claims that Standard Bank used Jeffrey Epstein to pitch deals to African governments. Gabon, Ivory Coast, Senegal. The pitch, currency swaps, oil hedges, infrastructure loans, offered through a convicted sex offender, framed as a solution. Now I'm going to keep it 100 with you guys and be transparent. I couldn't find any data sources that were reliable online, BBC, Reuters or FT to verify this. Just email screenshots that I found online that was said to have come from the files themselves. But let's keep it honest. Would Legacy Press even touch this if it were true? I mean, even if it's not proven, it's still the right moment to ask the real questions, because people like Epstein don't work for free. If he was used as a fixer, what was he trading in return? Banks want access. Epstein specializes in that. Presidents, palaces, preferences. He was known to use influence, favor, sex, power, children. So was he brokering financial deals or something darker? Was he offering introduction, silence? And what did he get back? Quiet commissions, hidden cuts, policy leverage? Because this isn't just about Epstein. I know his name is so loaded that it risks pulling attention away from the real issue. Systematic financial manipulation happening across the continent, with or without him. Standard Bank has moved billions across Africa. That's a fact. The deals aren't new, but how they're structured, that's the trap. A currency swap sounds technical, but here's what it means. Your government borrows in dollars, earns in local currency, and if the exchange rate shifts, you're in deeper debt before you've even touched the money. That's how foreign deals lock you in. The contract looks like help, the repayment becomes control, and if shady middlemen are part of the pitch, the question's never really what's the deal, it's what's the cost. We have seen this before. Structural adjustment, IMF conditions, Ghana froze public wages, Zambia lost control of copper revenues, and now it's happening again, dressed in legal language, policy papers, partner logos. If debt shapes policy, who's writing the script? And if Epstein was part of the room, who let him in? And if he was in once, what else has already happened in silence? So what's the move, right? First, call it what it is. If criminal middlemen are helping land billion-dollar state deals, we need to ask if it's diplomacy or compromise. If contracts can't be scrutinized, that's not partnership, it's exposure. We need audit trails, real-time transparency, independent oversight, and the public, we can't stay passive. These deals shape fuel prices, imports, budgets, elections. You feel it at the pump, at the till, and your taxes. So ask questions, push MPs, watch the budgets, because if we don't follow the money, someone like Epstein will. And honestly, what else does this money play a role in? We have to ask. Sounds so dark. Anyway, let's talk in the comments. What are your thoughts?
So how are you watching the Epstein topic unfold around the world? Well, for me, the one thing that I noticed is the eerie silence about the fact that it is all a heinous Israeli government coup against the West. As we all know, it is an Israeli operation to take over Western governments by entrapping their leaders in depraved sexual acts, catching those sexual acts on video, and then blackmailing the leaders to do anything that Israel demands of them, or else the images would be made public. However, many who are discussing the topic fail to make the connection that today, even after Epstein's death, people are losing their freedoms and their rights in Europe and America today because of him. The increasing Israeli control of Western governments that we are all seeing today, it's Epstein's work. All the genocide denial by the governments of Europe and America, the denial of starvation and the refusal to do anything to stop the genocide. In fact, even sending even more bombs to exterminate the Palestinian people, arresting and deporting peaceful protesters in their own cities. All of this weird behavior is the direct product of Epstein's operation. Western leaders are supporting Israel under duress just so that their sex tapes are not made public. Netanyahu is probably watching to see what effect the release of the Epstein files is having on Israel's control over America and Europe. Clearly, he is not in any trouble so far because not only the names of the abusers are still redacted, but also everyone is focusing on everything else but Israel, the country that is the mastermind behind this actual Israeli coup d'etat conducted by one man on an Israeli mission. That's Jeffrey Epstein. If any other country had conducted such an operation against America, you would hear national security alarms everywhere. Diplomatic ties would be cut with that nation. And there would be war plans made and counterintelligence operations being conducted right now for the country, for America, to regain full sovereignty of its government, its institutions, and its democracy. The lukewarm concern shows how much America's national security apparatus has collapsed under Epstein's operation. To all those Americans complaining about a foreign country controlling America, that is exactly what Epstein was doing. Israel's complete takeover of America. Only one country in the world, namely Israel, uses pedophilia and cannibalism of children as a weapon to control foreign countries. American people, you are under attack by Israel. Israel wants your country, and Israel is getting away with conducting a coup against your country and installing an Israeli dictatorship against you, the American people. The only remaining simple solution at your direct disposal, and I will repeat this as many times as it takes, is the people of America kicking out of public office all these politicians whom you found bowing their heads to Israel. All these people being given free trips to Israel. That is the continuation of Israel's takeover of your country. It is the exponential increase of Israeli control over your lives. They already control your economy, your military-industrial complex, your Congress, your White House, even your conscience, through lies, fake victimhood, false flag operations, corruption with your politicians, and general deceit. The Epstein operation shows exactly which side of good or evil they are actually on. Cannibalism and sexual deviance on children cannot be the work of angels. It is the lifestyle of the beasts, monsters, and savages known today as Israel. Elections and nationwide public protests are the people's last line of defense to save yourselves and your country from the increasing Israeli lies, deceit, malice, fraud, traps, evil, and the rising Israeli tyranny and capture of your countries. I get nothing from anyone for saying this. I do it out of my own belief that you deserve better than a devious Israeli dictatorship cabal that is secretly siphoning all your tax dollars, your freedoms, your rights, and your jobs, and trampling over your democracy and your sovereignty in your own country. Just a month ago, I said in a public video that I suspect that Israel had the nudes and sex tapes of UAE leaders, and Israel is using these videos to blackmail them into doing whatever Israel wants, including getting involved in civil wars and terrorism in Africa. Today, I saw in the latest Epstein file a photo of one of UAE's leaders on the Epstein Island with two white girls in bikinis in his arms kissing him. That confirmed my previous suspicion that Israel has blackmailed the UAE with their nudes and sex tapes to do things for Israel, because that is what the Epstein Island was for. Get people there to have some holiday fun, young girls available on site, secretly record the guest doing unholy things, then blackmail the guest with those videos to do anything you want. I now also suspect that the FBI has also been co-opted into Israel's coup as an accomplice against America's democracy. And the FBI could now be trying to use the Epstein material it found to also secretly blackmail the same leaders and individuals in those videos to do whatever they demand of them. I am saying this because Jeffrey Epstein was already found guilty of sex trafficking for Israel's blackmail operation. Epstein's girlfriend was also already found guilty and jailed for the same child sex trafficking in the same Israeli blackmail operation. And the FBI has the Israeli blackmail sex videos where politicians are sexually abusing the children given to them by Epstein, who filmed the abuse for Israel's blackmail operation. Everybody who visited Epstein's island was filmed, including the Gulf leaders.
People keep getting stuck on whether Epstein had links to Cape Town, or whether he personally stepped foot in South Africa, or whether this or that name appearing in the files proves guilt. And I think that fiction is actually missing the point. The real issue here isn't novelty. None of this information is shocking if you have been paying attention. What is shocking is how little people are willing to interrogate the actual danger this exposes. South Africa is fertile ground for exploitation by wealthy foreigners, not hypothetically, not in theory, in practice. And it is fertile ground not because South Africans are uniquely immoral or broken, but because a culture of exploitation already exists at the most basic social level. When exploitation is normalized locally, it becomes invisible globally. We are living in a country with one of the worst gender-based violence crises in the world. That is not historic, that is statistically reality. Women's bodies are treated as currency, as capital, as objects to be exchanged between men to establish power, status, dominance, and social leverage. That happens in business settings, in social circles, in political spaces, and in everyday life. When that is the baseline, when women are already commodified, internally it becomes extremely easy for external actors to step in and scale that exploitation. And that is the part people don't want to confront because it's uncomfortable. It admits that predators don't just invade healthy societies, they look for societies where the groundwork has already been laid. When you have an influx of digital nomads, foreign investors, foreign tourists, wealthy outsiders with strong currency and weak accountability, you need multiple layers of protection: legal protection, social protection, institutional protection, cultural protection, and those layers are already failing the people who are supposed to be most protected: local women, children, and vulnerable communities. If a South African woman is assaulted today and goes to the police, what happens? We know the answer. She is questioned, she's doubted, she's discouraged, she's sent home. Sometimes she's mocked, sometimes she's blamed. Sometimes she's told to resolve it privately. Sometimes she's told to come back later. Sometimes her case simply disappears. So the question isn't would someone like Epstein be prosecuted in South Africa? The question is why would he ever be? If someone like Epstein we are operating here, the odds are not that justice would prevail. The odds are the issue would die at the first point of contact with authority because of our social fabric already contains an unspoken heritage of resolution. First, we sort it out privately. If that fails, we pay someone off. If that fails, we escalate the bribe. If that fails, we use influence. If that fails, we bury the story. And that is not a conspiracy theory. That is lived reality for millions of South Africans who have watched accountability dissolve in real time. And yet, when people talk about the dangers of foreign influence in South Africa, it's almost always framed narrowly. Property prices, gentrification, being priced out of the city, and yes, those are real issues, but they are not the most dangerous ones. The deeper danger is that cities become playgrounds, and when cities become playgrounds for the wealthy, the people who live there stop being citizens and start being consumables. They become staff, entertainment, bodies, toys, especially in contexts where poverty, inequality, and desperation intersect with glamour and aspiration. Cape Town is a perfect example, a global marketed paradise surrounded by deep inequality, a city where luxury exists meters away from desperation, a city that is sold internationally as affordable, beautiful, permissive, and indulgent. That combination is cat's hip for predatory wealth. And what makes this even more concerning is that this isn't speculative. There are already documentaries documenting this reality. Channel 4 released a documentary examining what they called the slave queen economy in South Africa, and stripped of sensationalism, what that documentary review was something for darker than social media aesthetics. It revealed how easy it is to buy access to women, how normalized transactional intimacy has become, how aspiration is weaponized, how survival is aestheticized. Local documentaries have gone even deeper, exposing the internal machines of this economy: the recruiters, the middlemen, the expectations, the silence, the shame, the lack of recourse, the normalization of exploitation dressed up as empowerment. And here's the part people don't like to say out loud. Every documentary like that doesn't just inform the public, it also informs predators. It maps the area, it highlights vulnerability, it advertises ease of access, it signals low resistance and low accountability. So when people are shocked that Epstein has connection in Africa or speculate about whether he came here, they are asking the wrong questions. Someone like Epstein doesn't need to personally visit every location to exploit it. Some systems do the work for him, networks do the work for him, intermediaries do the work for him, which brings us to why the Epstein files matter, even when they don't prove crimes. The appearance of South African political figures and diplomats in those files is not evidence of wrongdoing. On its own, that needs to be said clearly and responsibly. A name appearing in an email or a a passenger list does not equal guilt, full stop. But it does raise questions about proximity, about access, about network, about who moved in, what circles, and why. Take the email mentioning a dinner involving former President Jacob Zuma. On its face, it doesn't allege a crime. It doesn't confirm the dinner even happened. It doesn't prove anything illegal, and anyone claiming otherwise is being reckless. But what it does is spares the illusion that South African exists outside these global elite ecosystems. It shows that our leaders are not operating in isolation. They are not part of international social, political, and financial cycles where power, influence, and access intertwine. And that matters because when allies socialize across borders without transparency or accountability, the consequences are never limited to dinner conversations. Power moves quietly, deals are seeded informally, norms are reinforced socially long before they are codified legally. Then there's the deeper unsettling case of Natal Petwa, the former South Africa ambassador to France. Again, this must be approached carefully. His death was officially ruled a suicide after he fell from a hotel balcony in Paris. There was no public indication at the time of scandal or investigation involving him, but this alleged appearance in Epstein-related footage, reportedly seated on military private plane, raises uncomfortable questions, not accusation questions. Because when someone connected to controversial network dies under ambiguous circumstances, the absence of inquiry becomes as troubling as the presence of evidence, the lack of scrutiny, the speed with which narratives are closed. And silence is a recurring theme here. Silence protects reputation, silence protects institutions, silence protects power, but silence never protects victims. What ties all of this together is not Epstein as a person. He's dead. Flattening on him is easy because it allows us to externalize evil, to pretend the threat is exceptional rather than systemic. The real danger is the system that allows someone like him to operate for decades across countries, across institutions, across social classes without meaningful interruption. South Africa fits into that system not as an outliner but as vulnerable node, a country with immense inequality, weakened institutions, cultural normalization of exploitation, and high tolerance for impunity at the top. And that is why the conversation needs to be shifted. This isn't about gossip, it's not about sensational names, it's not about viral shock, it's about asking whether South Africa is equipped legally, culturally, institutionally to protect its people in a global economy where wealth moves freely and accountability does not. Because right now, the answer is no. And until that changes, the question isn't whether predators will notice South Africa. They already have. The question is whether we are willing to confront the uncomfortable truth that the danger isn't coming from outside alone. It's being sustained from within.
And if you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. Alright, lovely. See you when I upload the next video.